elaborate. The Department of Peacebuilding and Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, of course, is a big supporter of prevention efforts and feminist financing, and so we're very grateful for the partnership. And last but not least, our last co-host is UN Women, and we're incredibly grateful for the partnership to UN Women and their continued advocacy, support, and leadership on this matter. Lastly, I'd like to thank all of you. I know that CSW Day 2 is one of the most busiest times of the year, and so we're very grateful that you have taken the time to be in this room, and those of you who are joining us online, thank you for taking the time to discuss such a pressing issue. Now, without further ado, I will pass it over to our opening remarks. First, we have Mr. Dan Juvan, the State Secretary at the Ministry of Labor, Family, Social Affairs, and Equal Opportunities of Slovenia. Over to you.
Thank you, and a warm welcome to everybody. I'm delighted to be here today as one of the co-organizers of this important event. As you know, Slovenia is strongly committed to working for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. We support and share the aspiration of women and girls around the world to find their full, equal, and meaningful place in their societies in the interest of peace, prosperity, stability, and social justice. My country is a member of the Security Council for the next 2 years. In our work in the Council, we prioritize women and try to do this systematically. Let me explain why we feel this is extremely important. We are dismayed by the numerous eruptions of new as well as protracted conflicts and violence in recent years. We also know that women bear the brunt of any armed conflict, acts of violence, crises, or instability. But we also believe that women are not merely victims or survivors. They are critical agents for preventing conflicts and achieving peace, and they do this in various roles. So we cannot help but wonder what could have been different had we systematically included women and gender perspectives in preventing conflicts early on. For all these reasons, we believe in empowering peace through stronger and more sustained engagement and participation of women on all levels and in all processes. Gaps in their participation remains sizable, and in order to change that, we need strong and sustained engagement from all sectors. Moving towards this goal, we see civil society as an important and strong partner. We strongly condemn any attempt to intimidate and silence their voices and believe that support for their continued safe work is vital. We also need to rethink funding so to best prioritize women's prevention efforts. It is also for this end that we have started supporting civil society's voices through support for the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund. In 2023, we contributed to the fund's general work as well as to the rapid response window on women's participation in peace processes and the window for women's human rights defenders. We plan to continue this support to the work of the fund also in the future. Thank you for this opportunity and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. State Secretary, we're very excited to have Slovenia in the Security Council and to be able to have such a wonderful women, peace, and security ally among us. Next, I'd like to welcome Ms. Awa Dabo, the Director and Deputy Head of the Peacebuilding Support Office and the Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, colleagues. Just to say how pleased I am to be here. I have to say I've been in this room many times for many meetings, but this is incredible. You know, it's just the energy is just incredible. The amount of people in this room and the interest in this issue that is so central to the work and the idea of my colleagues. So I'm very pleased. Hope we're taking pictures so we can tweet. So indeed, it is my pleasure to be here and to engage with experts and practitioners to better understand and to further women's participation in conflict prevention efforts. As research has shown, conflict has a disproportionate impact on women. However, we also know that women are not only victims, they are also important responders and peacemakers. Women often know best the needs of their households, as well as the risks and the early signs of conflicts in their communities, and are therefore central to prevention efforts at all levels. For instance, Studies on prevention, such as the Pathways for Peace report, stress that effective prevention that identifies and addresses grievances fueling violence must be inclusive and based on broad partnerships across different groups, including women in all of their diversity. However, women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in building peace and preventing conflict remains an exception and not the rule. Women continue to face barriers to their influence and leadership. They struggle to find resources, and they face an increasing backlash and widespread impunity for attacks against them. Addressing these challenges requires our concerted efforts to push for what women peacemakers, peace builders, and rights defenders have repeatedly told us through our engagement with them. They have told us that we must push for the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women in all stages of the peace processes, as well as in prevention, management, and resolution of conflict at local, national, regional, and global levels. They've also told us that there must be increased, flexible, and sustainable funding for programs that further gender equality and women's empowerment, and for local women-led organizations and their peace-building activities. Therefore, gender equality and women's empowerment are at the center of our work. Allow me to just highlight very briefly 2 examples of the work that we do. Firstly, the Peacebuilding Commission. The Peacebuilding Commission plays a pivotal role in supporting women's participation in peace building and sustaining peace by providing a platform for women peace builders to address their priorities and concerns. It is critical to create more accessible platforms and spaces for women peace builders to contribute to policy and strategy discussions, as well as decision making at the national, regional, and global levels. The Peacebuilding Commission was the first intergovernmental body to adopt a gender strategy, aiming to ensure a more structured and systematic integration of gender perspectives across its work. This is a remarkable achievement. In 2022, the Peacebuilding Commission saw a high of 58% of meetings with participation of women in peace building from civil society organizations. In line with the commitment in the Commission's Gender Action Strategy Plan, we are committed to help support an increase in the participation of women peace builders in meetings of the Peacebuilding Commission, and to help track positive changes in women peace builders as a result of engaging with the Commission. Secondly, we have within our office, we support the Peacebuilding Fund. This fund provides financial leverage in support of women peace and security agenda through a gender promotion initiative. In 2023, for the 7th year in a row, the Peacebuilding Fund exceeded its internal target allocation for support to gender equality and women's empowerment, reaching 47% of the fund's investment. We know that adequate and sustained financing to help support women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in gender-responsive peace building is essential, including adequate funding for national and local civil society partners. So let me just conclude by saying that we will continue to work to ensure that discussions of peace-building policies and strategies, the engagement of the Peacebuilding Commission, and all the programming investment of the Peacebuilding Fund contribute to participation in conflict prevention at all levels and are shaped by their voices and leadership. Achieving these goals requires data and analysis to better understand women's role and contribution, as well as the gaps and challenges, including financial gaps that women face. We need to ensure a deeper understanding of the effects and impact of peace building. We want the ability of peace builders to make timely and evidence-informed decisions on peace building programming and policy. And that is why we are really excited to be here today, to be part of this event. We look forward to discussions on the findings and recommendations that we presented today, and we're keen to collaborate with all of you on turning these into very concrete actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this, and we are equally excited to have DPPA on board and the continuous support. Next, I'd like to pass over the floor to Ms. Sarah Hendricks. Good morning. The Director of Policy and Program and Intergovernmental Division at UN Women. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. And indeed, let me join in the chorus to say what an amazing room, so full, but also full of energy, which is important on this topic. State Secretary, it's wonderful to be here with you, Honorable Minister from Somalia as well, and all colleagues, fellow panelists, feminists in the room, and fellow committed peace activists. A warm welcome. I'm really pleased to join you today for this important conversation on peace and conflict prevention. Such a critical priority, and a priority so directly linked to this year's CSW theme. It has been, of course, almost 25 years since the adoption of Security Council Resolution 1325. And in these almost 25 years, we see that women and girls continue to bear the brunt of conflicts and wars that fundamentally they did not start. Military expenditures continue to soar. Securitized responses continue to prevail, and whether that's Sudan or Haiti or Afghanistan and beyond, we see that a staggering 614 million women and girls now live in contexts that are affected by conflict. A data point that has grown by 50% in just 5 years. These are women and girls also who are still largely excluded from the peace table, from particularly the decisions about the end of wars and the possibilities of peace. I want to take a moment to also acknowledge and mourn the lives lost in the course of conflict. And we stand in solidarity with all brave peace builders and with all women's human rights defenders, wherever they are and wherever they work. It is against this context that we know it is still catalytic, it is still important to make the case for the value addition as well as the cost effectiveness of this prevention work. Even though I think those in this room and certainly those in the field know that the case is well made every day and every hour that women show up and do this work. And it is also that women and girls have the right to lead and to participate. And that globally, women, amidst the work that they do as peace builders, as mediators, continue to risk their lives for the sake of that work and to risk their lives carrying both their families, their communities, but also the nations to peace. Women peace builders do so many things. The research is phenomenal. They negotiate the security of access to water for communities that are facing distinct challenges in terms of resource acquisition. They secure also the negotiation for humanitarian aid. They broker the release of political prisoners. They prevent and resolve tribal conflicts. They mediate local ceasefires. They also bring a halt to violations against civilians. This is the kind of conflict prevention work that my colleagues have already spoken about. And amidst all of that, this work unfortunately tends to go undervalued, underfunded, as well as underrecognized. And even more so for the unjust constraints that they face while doing this work. There are two data points that I hope you remember as we somehow leave this very tight room together. One is 7.7 and the other is 0.3. Women and girls in conflict-affected areas are 7.7 times more likely to be living in poverty, to be affected severely by extreme forms of poverty. The second data point is that 0.3% of bilateral aid to the humanitarian sector actually goes to feminist-led, women-led, women's rights organizations and movements around this world. A figure, unfortunately, that has decreased for 2 consecutive years now. And yet, in spite of these challenges, it is women peace builders that continue to persist. And I think it's the efforts such as this research and dialogue that are being advanced today that make it so that we can no longer dismiss a gender equality dividend that is needed more than ever before. We can no longer deny women and girls their right to a seat at the table. And I hope that each of us, wherever you are, can use your voice or your decision-making power or your vote or your presence to call for and accelerate support for local women's organizations, serving as key actors in conflict prevention and peace-building efforts worldwide. UN Women is so proud to host the Secretariat on behalf of the whole of the UN for the United Nations Women Peace and Humanitarian Fund, which you heard the State Secretary speak to in his remarks, which has mobilized and channeled new financing and critical capacity support to more than 1,200 local women's civil society groups on the front lines. And I'm so happy that we're joined by one of them here today. Kelly is here, Ms. Kelly Campo Becerra is here, one of our partners from Colombia, and I'm so energized to hear what you have to share with us from your work. Thank you, Kelly. We are also delighted to have a long-standing partnership with the Peace Building Office, the long acronym of PBSO, of DPPA, and in particular with the Peace Building Fund of the Secretary General, who leads by example. You already heard the data that Awa shared. This data point she shared is best in class of the work that they are doing. 47% of expenditure reaching gender-targeted work. It is the best in class of the whole UN system and is so impressive, something that we all hope to emulate and hope that the whole system follows suit to see dedicated resources. Colleagues, as I close, the Women, Peace and Security agenda is a prevention agenda. It holds great significance for UN Women's work. It represents a response to past injustices. It also represents an opportunity to pave a new way forward. Prevention is a powerful tool for promoting inclusivity, for promoting meaningful participation, for driving sustainable progress in conflict prevention, in peace building, but also in recovery and reconstruction. Today, there are so many experts around the table who will be speaking from their work, also practitioners who are at the forefront of empowering women on prevention of conflict, on building peace in their communities. We hope that we will deliberate on strategies to enhance women's participation. And together, I hope that we can all advocate more for and amplify women's voices to collaboratively forge pathways ahead for their meaningful participation, including, importantly, funding to women's rights organizations to continue this important peace-building work. With that, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for these important remarks and for the continued support and collaboration of UN Women. Now, colleagues, we're going to turn the floor over to our online participant. Dr. Sandra Al-Zubi is a development economist and lecturer and researcher at Global Development Studies at St. Mary's University, and so happens to be the lead author of the policy paper on prevention of work. In the room, I'd like to invite our panelists to join me up front and do a little switcheroo with our wonderful opening remarks, so that we can then launch into the panel. So over to you, Sandra, online.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's some fun honor to be here today, actually, to discuss program work with participation in conflict prevention. This is Josie, and I'm here today to share the key findings, actually, and the implications of our policy on the value added in women's conservation prevention efforts. presents concrete examples of women's contribution to conflict prevention and provide evidence of their effectiveness and added value in terms of political, social, and economic values. This research underscores the significance of women-led conflict prevention in fostering enduring peace, adding to the growing body of evidence supporting this notion. So in terms of the key findings, actually we're going to go through 3 pillars of these of political, social, and economic key findings. So let's start with the first pillar values of women's participation in conflict prevention, and it's about how women create transformative change and maintain culture with the militarization. How women perceive signs of women's conflict and have the capacity and authority to mitigate instability and violence. How women exert significant influence over their households and communities, promoting messages of peace. Also, women have the trust and necessary skills to build trust and consensus among various stakeholders, and finally, women's intersectional and diverse knowledge and skills to the negotiation table. Let's move to the social added values actually, and it's how women's participation in the security sector curbs violence against women by promoting, reporting, and enhancing protection mechanisms. How women-led prevention work further contributes to a decrease in violence against women and through awareness raising, training, and emotional and psychological support, and the participation of women's groups in the prevention and peace-building work promotes also social cohesion. In terms of the economic added values of women's participation, actually, here we're going to focus on how women advance social and economic justice for all, including women and displaced people, contributing significantly to long-term peace and stability. How women's participation in conflict prevention narrows the gender gap and positively impacts economic growth and development. And the economic empowerment of young women, both those marginalized based on age and gender, has a mitigating impact on the drivers of violence and conflict and the national economy overall. And let's move now to the recommendation. And here, we've actually recommends several recommendations or key messages to several actors, including United Nations member state agencies, international non-governmental organizations, the donor community, national and local governments, finance, and security sector actors as well. So, we're going to start these recommendations with the financial support recommendations. It's about to provide sustained human, financial, and institutional support to women-led and youth-led organizations that promote women's leadership and participation in conflict prevention and peace building, encompassing training, capacity building, legal, economic, psychological, and health services. Is to invest in training programs, awareness raising campaigns, cross-learning opportunities, and information and communication technology to enhance the capacity of women and youth to recognize and report potential conflicts. To support women-led prevention work that focuses on youth, is awareness raising, youth empowerment and leadership training, intergenerational dialogue, cross-learning, and mental health support. It's to support the establishment and strengthening of grassroots women's organizations, networks, federations, and cooperatives as well. Let's move to the political knowledge or support initiatives that enhance women's economic participation and contribution contribute to conflict prevention. For example, through targeted financing programs and policies including women's equal access to effective resources and opportunities. To recognize and integrate the acknowledged actual contribution of women's unpaid work into national statistics, into the GDPs, the calculations, and forecasts and pension policies as well. To prioritize the adaptation and implementation of international frameworks on women's participation, such as Accusation Security Council 1325 and Women Peace Security National Action Plans at the national and local levels, including dedicated budgets and monitoring mechanisms for effective implementation. To advocate legislative changes to enhance women's rights and representation, aiming for a minimum of 30% representation in leadership, political governmental negotiation, and mediating roles. In addition to other action recommendations in terms of the capacity building, how to enhance the capacity of women-led and youth-led organization by investing in comprehensive capacity building programs, to integrate education and training on the effectiveness of women inclusion in peace building, military, and conflict prevention policies and programs. In addition to other recommendations in terms of cross-sectoral collaboration, to strengthen the collaboration between civil society, government institutions, and other relevant peace and security stakeholders to promote women's participation in prevention efforts. So, for example, through dialogues, information exchange, cross-learning, and training opportunities. And for further research, actually, to encourage and support more research on the impact and value added of women's participation in conflict prevention. That's it for now. Thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Al-Kubi. Thank you for all the work that you've put into this, and we're very excited to hear about some of the key highlights and recommendations. I'd like now to pass over the floor to our colleague, Marina Kuskova, the Senior UN Policy and Advocacy Advisor, and everyone knows her here in New York, from the Global Partnership of the Prevention of Armed Conflict, GPAC. Over to you, Marina, as our key partners in peace on this research.
Thank you, Katrina. Now definitely everyone knows what this is. The amount of recommendations that Sasha presented me, I would say. Therefore, what I wanted to focus my presentation on is really highlighting why that research adds a lot of value both to the donor community, to the governments, as well as civil society, when it comes to being able to articulate the cost effectiveness, the social added value of women's prevention work. One is that the research that has been conducted contributes to the growing area of research on what impact of peace building and conflict prevention action means. There is certainly within the PBS now the impact hubs. I think that research certainly provides a great contribution towards understanding what does it mean to do impactful programming. And then once we know what impactful programming means, then the donors are able to make a more effective decisions in terms of what are the type of support they should definitely provide to the community. And the second added value is really making a business case, right? Because a lot of the language that we are trying to put in kind of mirroring the good practices from the Pathways for Peace report, when we were trying to really identify, okay, how much money we invest in the local peace building work, which we know is not that expensive, but we do know that the amount of added economic, financial, political, and other types of value is a lot of costs, and sometimes we don't really think about it. What would happen if domestic violence would never happen? Right? How much money would we actually save at the community level if at least one woman would not face domestic violence in the costs of mental health, in the cost of any type of medical bills, just personal treatment, how much does that cost? So during the 2020 peace building, actually the peace building commission did recognize that peace building action should no longer be measured in terms of outputs and should be definitely measured in terms of impact, like the social structures need to be supported at the community level. And a lot of that came through this paper as well as GPAC experiences more broadly, demonstrates that a lot of this is not really the outcomes that we predict when we draft the funding proposal. It's actually a lot of it about unintended outcomes, right? So I'll give you one concrete example of where that makes a lot of difference. In one of the projects that Peace Building Fund supported in the Pacific Islands on climate-sensitive risk assessment, the work has been done by the UN and colleagues who are not based in the Pacific. Yes, that research resulted in a good policy recommendations that fed in the relevant climate insecurity processes, resulted in creation of new infrastructure to support climate insecurity architecture. But we did the research with financial support of UNDP in 3 countries, Uganda, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique, last year on exactly the same topic, but our work was done by local peace builders, from the design to implementation to everything. What we did as GPAC, we basically collected that information and helped frame it in the way that would be acceptable at the global level. And what that resulted with is not necessarily only with the good research, good recommendations, good policy processes and the infrastructures being developed, but it also led to increased understanding within local communities taking the initiative for people to take up this climate-sensitive action on their own, to develop new strategies, to generate local information, to connect indigenous communities to the global, regional, and national decision-making processes. So when you do let local colleagues to fortunately continuously say that this is what women do and this is why it's important, and the research does provide very concrete examples, but we also need to look at how we fund women. So there are a few principles that GNWP in the previous research, not related to this one, with GPAC, ICANN, and other organizations have developed. We do outline very concrete principles of what and how to fund local peace builders. First and foremost, as I already said, the decision making needs to be rooted in locally led processes. The partnership needs to be authentic. We have to start trusting local communities to do what they need to do and see what results. It doesn't have to cost millions. It can be $10,000 for pilot projects from which we can see whether or not it's worth it. So it's really not as much of a risky investment. There is a good practice, of course, with WPHF, Women Peace Humanitarian Fund, having civil society on the board and supporting really unpacking what does it mean to support local peace builders directly. But we do need to, in the long term, turn towards finding local peace builders directly. And that, of course, does not benefit neither GPAC or GNWP to say these things, but we should really be aiming at doing that. And we've seen a lot of examples, particularly in Africa, when a lot of organizations starting very small in the bedroom of their own apartments, turning in very big organizations, doing a lot of good research on peace building in Africa. So that is possible, and we all jointly may contribute to it. Thank you.
Sharing some of these advocacy points we've been repeating and repeating over the years. Some of them have been implemented, others we continue to repeat, but we will do so until we see them be actualized. Now, colleagues, I told you at the beginning that we have one of our colleagues who will be speaking Spanish. So this is the moment that you switch